G'day, Stu here from UAVfutures, and today, well, it's Sunday, so what that means is it's Q&A time. Now, it's raining outside, so I haven't been flying too much today, but hopefully you guys can hear me and it's not coming through on the mic because it is sort of pouring outside. Anyway, what we do in these segments, I go through the last video, the last Q&A, and I pick out all the comments, or all the questions that you guys had, and then I basically answer them. So if you've got a question for next week's episode, or next fortnight's episode, make sure you stick it down in the comments below so we can go through and hopefully get you guys answered the questions that you want to know. Anyway, enough rambling. Let's jump straight in and have a look at the questions. And I've done it a little bit differently this time because I just took a screenshot of all the questions that I wanted rather than me siphoning through and finding them all on the computer. Anyway, let's jump right in and have a look. So this one's from Nitro15K, and it says, do higher C ratings on batteries matter? Would you recommend a higher or lower C ratings for beginners? P.S. Really enjoying your content. Well, thanks very much, Nitro. Really glad you're enjoying the content. And my advice on C rating is you don't want to go too low, and you also don't want to go too high because really that C rating number has been so just exaggerated in all of the batteries, and it's not really an accurate measurement anymore, I don't think. I think a lot of companies are lying about their C rating and all that sort of stuff. But generally, the better C rating, so if you have, let's use a multi-star example, so if you have a 40 C rating multi-star and an 80 C rating multi-star, the 81 is going to be better than its counterpart, but it's very difficult to compare them across brands. And I would say, yes, get a reputable battery that you can trust and then try and get a high C rating. Don't get anything too low like that. Anything less than 40, especially even for a beginner, less than 40 is really going to cause some voltage sags when you're smashing out the amps. And if you've got some really hungry motors like red bottoms or anything with the really powerful magnets, that's where you need even better C-rated batteries. So as a general rule, try to find a battery brand that you like and get the highest C rating that you can. And that's why higher C rating batteries are more expensive, because it means the battery actually performs better and can deliver more juice when you need it. Rightio, Elias Treger, how often do you either kill here's another battery question. How often do you either kill a LiPo or retire one? When should you retire LiPos? Do you break in your batteries? Are you going to be a crazy grandpa flying those old tech drones in 50 years? Rightio, so that's a bit of a two-part question. So let's talk about the batteries first. How often do I kill a LiPo? Maybe once a month or something like that in a big flying session. And I'm putting out maybe once every 100 batteries that I fly or something like that. Once every 150 LiPos that I actually fly, I might wreck one, and that could either be like just one damaged cell or causing it to burst or something like that. But lately I've been really trying to look after my batteries because they're quite expensive. In regards to how often should I retire one, that's when I feel unsafe to fly it. So if I've pushed one really hard and I know I've been abusing it too much, I'll monitor it, and if it's getting really puffy and really hot and it's really not holding its charge well, it's not charging up well, I'll just be like, okay, that's it. I'm not going to fly that one anymore. I'll put it into storage mode and watch it for a little bit, and if I still feel unsafe about it, if it's really bad, I'll just dispose of it. So it's really up, for me, it's a safety thing. If they're getting really puffy, really squishy, and also on their age, like if they're getting past a year old, it might be time to consider retiring your LiPos because, you know, they can be very dangerous. Do I break my batteries in? No, look, I don't know the science too much about that, but I'm probably not. I really think that I abuse my batteries quite a bit. Look, I put them into storage charge and stuff, but I feel bad for the batteries that I slap on my GT2 and some of those other quads because the amount of amps that I pull out of them, they must be hurting a little bit, and they come down very, very hot. So I put my batteries on and I pretty much go flat chat straight from the start. So no, I don't break my batteries in, but I know that some pilots do that out there. And the last part of this question, am I going to be a crazy grandpa flying these old tech drones in 50 years? Yeah, I hope so. So that means I'd be 80 something in 50 years time. And if I'm still flying these when I'm 80, I would be so happy. That would be awesome. I would love to still be flying these things, I think. It might be a little bit like video games, like the very first Nintendo Entertainment System or something like that. That's a really cool little fun thing that I played when I was a kid. And I think I'll still play something like that when I'm older. It's probably the same for these. Like, even if they've got really new fandangled drones that do all these amazing things, they might be really cool, but I might like the ones that I guess I grew up in, or I grew up on, or at least I started with. Marshall Campbell, awesome channel, Stu. What lens size do you use for your FPV cam, and what are your thoughts on larger, smaller fields of view, and which would you recommend for a beginner? So this is a really interesting question, because this is one of those personal preference things. Like, I know it was 2.8 was all the rage when I first started. Then people went down to 2.1, so that wider field of view, so they could see more when they're actually flying around. And then I know 2.5 with the GoPro style lens on there, a lot of people sort of found that as a nice middle ground. As a rule, I would say just fly whatever works best for you. So like pinching with your controller, like whether you're going to be pinching or thumbing, just find the one that works best for you. Look, some might have some advantages and disadvantages, but and I definitely think the wider field of view, it's going to help you see more, but I also think it makes you feel like you go a little bit faster because the outsides are rushing past so much more. And yeah, I think it doesn't give you that depth perception quite as much. So for me, I like 2.5, but that's my personal preference. And I fly much better on 2.5 than I think the 2.1 or the really widescreen makes my flying a bit sloppy. So even though I can see more, I find my laps aren't as consistent, and it wouldn't be as good in a race anyway. But generally for a beginner, just find the one that works for you. I think 2.5 is a really nice middle ground, so I'd go, and if you don't have any idea what you want, definitely start out by checking that one out, because I think that's a nice middle ground. Alrighty, Graham Addict, anyway, Graham, g'day. How do you secure your video antennas to your quad, and what's the best way to mount them to minimize damage either to themselves or the frame in a crash? Now this all depends on what type of frame that you're rocking, but really I've changed the way that I think about mounting antennas. Sometimes in the past I've mounted them straight out the top, and they used to have a little bit of a pigtail, but I found some of those connectors have been snapping off, and depending on what antenna you have. At the moment, what I'm loving, I've been desoldering my antennas and just putting on like the little dipolar whip. So I've got one on right here, and that thing is ready to rock and roll. That thing's never really going to break or anything like that. So the worst thing you can do is just have a loose antenna out the back. Then some people do put their, depending on what type of antenna as well, because you might have like a TBS Triumph or one of those ones with a really like well protected canopy, and then in that case you're probably worrying about the antenna snapping off at the base. But generally, if you are going to secure it to the frame and it's sticking up, and make sure you're using a pigtail. But the even better way, I think, to mount it now, if you've got more than one antenna, because sometimes if you've only got one antenna to share between the quads, you do want to be able to remove it, I guess, and swap it around. But is just to zip tie it down to the frame, so to keep it out of the way, so on an impact it's not going to be snapping it off, it's not going to get snagged by a tree, and it might be protected a little bit by the carbon arms. So you can zip tie them down, coming straight out the back, and then twist it up or twist it down, whichever way to keep it out of the prop. So zip ties are your friend. Pigtails can be your friend as well if you are going to be mounting it through the hole and sticking it up out the top. But my best advice is just put on a little dipolar antenna. I don't know if that's going to focus, but that thing there, that's never going to snap off in a crash, and you get pretty good video off that as well. I'm a big fan of the whips. In my country, there's very few people doing this hobby. What do you recommend I can do to get more people involved here? Well, number one, direct them. I'm going to plug my own channel here, show them some of my YouTube videos. But in terms of, I guess, meeting more people or getting other people interested, start a Facebook group or something like that, because that's really gonna help. Jump online, see if there's any forums, and I'll talk about forums because there's a question coming up on that. And I guess see if there's any people around what you're doing. But it'd be all really through Facebook. I think if there's no one in your area doing it, make your own page on Facebook, even if you're the only one there, because there might be other people searching as well. Post up on forums, and I guess use the internet. That's the best way to find. That's how I found all the people that I fly with. It's all been through online and meeting. There's not one single person that I fly with that I knew outside of FPV that I fly with today or have ever flown with. It's always been through meeting people online. All right, here's a really good one from Wade Vermeech. I hope that's right. Sorry, Wade. My question is, how much gear do you take with you to the field for the day, and how do you carry it all around? Do you just carry bags of quads and batteries, or have you got a cart or something? I ask because some of your locations seem a bit remote, and if you're filming and you're also carrying that gear, thanks for producing such good content, and happy flying to you. Well, happy flying to you too, man. Thanks so much for putting a question in, because a lot of people want to know these things, and I really appreciate it when people take the time to put their questions in. But how much gear do I take? So I will probably take 5 quads to the field. I will take 2 backpacks. So one's usually full of my radio, my props, my Fat Shark goggles, sometimes a second pair of Fat Sharks, depending if someone's coming for a ride along or not. and my tools and a couple of antennas and some small action cameras, which I'll also got another question coming up soon about the different action cameras. And then in my other one, I use another backpack. I usually carry the more miscellaneous stuff. So I will have a little bit of filming gear that I personally use, my chair that I'll stick in there, and then some snacks and some drinks. And then I've got a third thing that I carry. So I carry around one of these. It's like a toolbox that I store all my lipos in. So I'll probably put like maybe between 20 to 40 lipos in there depending on how many batteries I want to actually get through, and I'll take out all those lipos in there. So if they really went off, at least they're in a metal box. I can just chuck that out the window in the car or something like that. So I definitely don't want my batteries going off next to my Fat Sharks or my radios or anything like that. So I do have quite a bit of gear to take, but I can generally take it in one trip from the car. So when I've got to go for a walk, I load up. There's a backpack on the front, backpack on the back. I might have also carrying Trevor's gates or something in this hand. I'm carrying my toolbox, and then yeah. So whatever I take, I can usually manage it in one trip. But there is quite a lot of stuff to take, and that's definitely one reason. This is a bit of a side tangent, but one reason why I prefer radios like this. Oh, you can see I've been messing around with my dream radio. What is this? The Evolution shaped one with a Free Sky sticker on there. Imagine how cool that would be. Anyway, I digress. That's why sometimes I really like radios that are simple like this. I can throw this in my bag, whereas this, if it needs a separate case around it, is going to take up a lot more room. And that might be okay for some people out there, but for me, space really is a premium when I'm trying to get to the field, and yeah, it can be a little bit difficult actually. It takes me usually a couple of hours the night before I go flying to lay everything on the floor, check that I've got everything, and there's quite a lot of stuff that I need to take to the field. So any way that things can get smaller, simpler, or just easier to transport, in my opinion, is a godsend for me. It really, really helps. Okay, I don't know how to pronounce this one. Lethe for the win, handball. What's the best prop for speed? So, in my opinion, you want the biggest prop that you can. So if you're going for flat out max speed, I would say get a 6-inch prop. Just the 2-blade, because it's going to cut through the air better. This is a 5-inch. And then also one that's got a fairly sharp, aggressive angle, and also a fairly sharp bull nose on the end. If you're just going for max, flat-out speed, definitely that's what you want. In terms of speed around a race course, do I think that's the best prop? No, this would be just straight line speed. If you're talking about trying to get some really good lap times, well, it could maybe like a light prop, or I think a tri-blade is generally going to, on most courses anyway, something like a tri-blade Cyclone or something like that is going to do you a lot better. You're going to be a lot quicker through the turns and those other parts that aren't flat out straights. You're going to do a lot better with a prop like this one. Okay, moving on. Tim McMacken. That's a cool name. Tim McMacken. How much do you think flying line of sight prepares you for FPV? It might get used to the power. I'm just going to put a number on there. I'm going to say 15%. There you go. So that's how much it's actually going to help you. It might help you with some of, I guess, finding out how much throttle and how your rates go and those sorts of things. But once you put those goggles down, it is totally different. You don't have to worry about your orientation. It can be very disorientating when you first put them on for your peripheral vision, because it feels like you don't really know where you are, because you don't have this massive normal peripheral that you're used to in everyday life. And I would say, yeah, get into FPV as soon as you can, or jump on the sim and box, even if you've got to put your face up to the computer or something like that. That's going to prepare you heaps better, because flying line of sight is, yeah, I'm going to say 15% of it. That's learning to know your quad a little bit and maybe your throttle control. But in regards to actually flying around FPV, I don't think flying line of sight really helps that much. So yeah, 15%, that's my guess. If you've got some different opinions, definitely stick them down in the comments below. And because this is just my opinion, but yeah, I'm going to say about 15%. This one from Ray Dilemma, and he's saying, don't really need to answer this question, Stu, but I keep hearing about forums for quad races. There are far too many when Googling it. Which is the best and most active forums for racing quads? Maybe there's a few good ones. Can I please get a response? Thanks in advance. No worries, Ray. This is something that I'm going to mention one forum that I've posted a lot on in the past, and back before I even did UAVfutures or anything like that. Like, I wrote some little guides or something, but there was a forum on Reddit called Multicopter, and there's a few other links in the sidebar for Reddit, in the Multicopter Reddit and subreddit, I should say. And that for me was the biggest springboard. That's how I met my first pilot that I ever flew with someone else. There was heaps of advice in there, and generally it's really turned into a bit of more of a racing one at the moment. There's lots more racing quad stuff on there, but there's also still some general other, I guess, multicopters and those sorts of things. So that's my biggest shout out. Hey Reddit, the multicopter subreddit on there, they do a fantastic job. There's heaps of useful people on there, and I think it's got like 40,000 members. There's always new posts. There's tons of new posts every day and heaps of conversations. So I think that's a really healthy, positive place for our community over there. So if you haven't checked out the subreddit multicopter, I'll leave a link down below in the description anyway. Go check that out, because that's a great place not only to meet people but share your experiences, some funny photos. There's like build guides, tips. There's a whole bunch of useful stuff on there that's always changing and updating, and it's always fresh. So yeah, there you go. There's a little plug for the Reddit subreddit. Hopefully get some new members in there. Okie dokie, Nicholas Larsera. I felt like I pronounced that one pretty well. When you're flying like a bat out of hell, how do you gauge your distance to the ground so well? Is there a trick? In not smashing the ground when you're flying across the course? Love the show, Stu. Thanks very much, man, because I love making this show and I love making content for you guys, and I wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't for you. But in regards to that it's all about the throttle control, and I think the more you tilt your camera, I'm going to use this quad for an example. So you can see I've got my camera tilt just here. The more you tilt, that's probably about flat, but the more you tilt your camera, the easier you're going to find it to gauge your throttle, because you've got so much of the thrust coming out the back, and it's not quite as zippy. If this thing was flat and I was trying to gauge the throttle, you can imagine just how much it's going to be going up and down. So really, the faster and the more, you know what? I'm going to leave a video in the description about angle tilt and how it helps you fly, so go and watch that. But that's also one of the ways that I manage the throttle, because I find tilt really helps. And it really just comes down to practice, like those low gates. And, you know, I've been doing this for about 2 years. So it really all comes down to putting those packs through, and you just learn to know your quad and find out how it goes. I will say that I do know that it's a little bit tricky. Sometimes if I have a little prang and my camera angle slips down, you can notice this one's all duct taped up, so there's no possible way it can move. But if my camera angle goes flat, I find it really hard to balance that throttle. So for me, yeah, I think my biggest tip for gauging your height to the ground and keeping that throttle in those nice, smooth, low corners, put some angle on your camera. That's really going to help. Anyway, put this back on the wall. Oh, here's another little tip that I love, actually, bonus little part. This goes back to the antennas. We were talking the other day about how to mount the antennas. I love doing this style for my receiver antennas. So just putting them out the back in a little V right there. I find that's a really good way. And then I just put some zip ties and some heat shrink over the both. There's no way that that's going to go anywhere. So I've been doing that for a lot of my quads lately. I know Pezzy Double D with a B, he's another pilot I fly with, shout out to Pezzy. He does it this way as well. So it's a really, really useful way to keep your antennas locked. So rather than sticking them out the top when you find they might fall over, get chopped off or something like that, think about sticking them out the back two arms in sort of a V shape, so they're perpendicular to each other. That's a nice little tip. Okay, Scraps FPV, interested in putting an action camera on my quad, but the GoPros are really expensive. Are there any cheaper alternatives that have similar video qualities? I hear what you're saying, brother. Like, though, I only just got my GoPro after 2 years of flying, and it was like a birthday present, so I've only had that this year. Thanks very much to my lovely wife for that birthday present. But what I actually got the year before, and I flew with this for a whole year, and the majority of my flight footage that's been on UAVfutures has been from this thing. So this is a little Yaomi G or Yomi G, however you pronounce it. I can't pronounce it right. But this is a little action camera that does 1080p, 60 frames a second, and I think the quality is pretty decent. Like, I did use a Mobius right at the start, and then since I made the switch to this, I think if you're on a budget, you really can't go wrong with a G, or that's what I used to use anyway, the Yomi G. Now I use a GoPro. I think there is a jump in quality, but for me, if you're on a budget, I was really happy with this camera. Like, I still take this with me for a backup, and I don't think there's anything wrong with putting some footage up for one of these. Just do a little mod on the top and put some foam across the little mic there, because it does suffer from a lot of wind noise. Okie dokie, so for the question and answer, this one's from Random FPV. Question, does it bother you when other people answer your Q&A questions? I've done it several times, not even realizing the question was for Stu. No, mate, honestly, the more people that comment and the more people that involve and help each other, that's what this channel's all about. So if it's a really good question, and even though someone else has answered it, I'm going to jump in there and say my 2 cents in this video. But if you see a question from somebody else and they might be asking something and you know the answer, help them out, because that's what this whole show is all about. It's all about sharing, being part of a community, and that's something that I really believe in, and I know there's a ton of fantastic viewers out there who all feel the same way. So if there's a question in the comments that you want to know, stick it down there, because people will answer you. And if you know the answer to someone else's, definitely help them out and give them a little shout out and give them a response as well, because you never know, your response might be the question that changes someone's entire build, or possibly even someone's entire flight experience, because you've helped them out. So if you see a question that you know the answer to, definitely jump in, don't be scared, and just offer your opinion on what you think, or do your best to try to help everybody out, because we're all in this together. Alright, moving on. Bot Grinder FPV. When are you going to start traveling to the USA so we can hang out? You know what? There was another question like this about, like, am I heading to Flight Fest? And I would love to go to Flight Fest one day. I would love to come over to the USA, meet up with like the Rotor Riot crew, the flight test crew. There's a whole bunch of YouTubers that I watched. Everybody seems to be in the States, or 90% of the people that I watch on YouTube all seem to be in the States. I would love to. So I don't know how we go about getting this happening, but I feel like together as part of the community, we can do this. So if you know someone at Flight Test or something like that, definitely hit them up. I don't know the dates or anything like that, whether it be this year or next year or something. Trust me, I would love to come to the States and do like a pilot meet and all those sorts of things. That's like a bit of a dream of mine. That's like that's something that I would love to do. So yeah, I would love to make it over to the States sometime. Alrighty, and then here's the last one. This one's from Drew R, and it's a bit of a long question, so I'm going to paraphrase it down, but it says, from Drew R, I've noticed that China is pumping out pre-built models faster than anyone can review them, so they're glutting the market. This is to say the balance and focus on YouTube at the moment is reviewing and not building anymore. Should YouTubers get back to builds for education, or should they be focusing on reviewing? Now, my response to that is, I love doing build guides, but I also love doing reviewing, and I want to show you guys as many products as I can. So it's not only the Chinese products that I want to show, but things like the Twig. I've got some things from Armaton coming as well, some smaller independent companies. I've got some stuff from Australia coming soon that I can't wait to show you guys. And in terms of builds, I love making build guides, but there's only so many ways I can show you how to solder up to an ESC. Like, I've got a Get build that's very, very similar to like my 180 racing build somewhere. I've got up to 12 build guides on my channel, and I don't want to be showing people the same thing. Like, it's the same, if you're going to build with this frame or that frame, or with this motor or that motor, it's really all the same. So I'll probably do new build guides. Like, I've got some ones coming up for like a 5S monster build and those sorts of things. So when things change a little bit, if it's a new build guide and something that I think people will need to see and they'll learn new things from, I'll probably make a new build guide. But other than that, if it's just something that I've already covered and just some slightly different components, I'm probably going to stay more on the review side or the tip side of things. So that's my 2 cents on I guess how my channel works. I want to show you guys things that you're going to find relevant and interesting, and I don't really want to be repeating myself too much by just doing a build guide for every single frame that I get. Anyway, hopefully you guys like this content, and hopefully you guys like this Q&A. Like I said before, if you've got a question for the next segment in a fortnight, stick it down in the comments below, because that's one of the best ways that I guess people can learn and I can help give back to this community. And if you see someone else's question, definitely give that a thumbs up if you want to know the answer for that as well, because that'll push that to the top and help me see it, because we get a heap of comments on here and I want to make sure I pick the most relevant one for you guys. Anyway, hopefully you guys like that. Subscribe for more FPV related content. It's just stopped raining, so I might be able to go and sneak a few sneaky batteries in if I'm allowed. But other than that, subscribe for more FPV related content, and as always, happy flying. Alrighty, so hopefully you guys enjoyed that video. Definitely subscribe if you're new to the channel and check out these videos. And I'm also going to leave a little link here to my Patreon page, because I've got some fantastic Patreon supporters and I like to give back to them as well. So if you want to join the UAVfutures family, there's things like bonus Velcro straps, little bundles of FPV goodies and things like that that also get sent out. Anyway, happy flying.